Alrighty, got a quick little build overview of what's been my league starter for Expedition League, which is a strength stacking Brutus Lead Sprinkler Consecrated Path Totem build with the new Earthbreaker support gem. Pop in a map here, not too crazy of a map, just some basic show off kind of how it runs, and go over more or less how the build plays, how the gearing is going and will go, and kind of my thoughts on the build as a whole. So first things first, it is very much a melee totem build. So if you've played a War Chief build in the past, it's very similar. It does have a very distinct advantage in terms of map clear, with Consecrated Path Totems having a bit bigger AoE by default, and the new Earthbreaker support giving about 50 something percent increased AoE. And the totems can teleport because they're using Consecrated Paths. You can see them kind of, they can jump around and clear multiple packs, which is a huge boost versus what you got with just the War Chiefs. It's still not necessarily like insanely fast, although I do believe if you wanted to try to optimize it for speed, you very much could with enough attack speed. Just pop mobs out of this. I'm not gonna spend too much focusing on min-maxing it. But as long as you're a chieftain, you can see the activation range, which is the melee totems will actually deactivate and stop attacking if you get too far away. But with the chieftain, I can get pretty far away. Like, so I can get totems basically off the edge of my screen and they're still attacking. It's quite good. Thanks to 100% increased activation range on one of the chieftain nodes. And that kind of leads you to having two options, more or less, on how you play it mapping, in my eyes, which is you can play for faster speed, which is basically I'm just going to run around like a normal totem. I'm going to place my totems and just trust that they're going to kill things, which generally speaking they will. It's a little bit riskier because you end up in time running through mobs as you place a totem, and there is a delay before they activate. Like if I place this and I run through, you see it takes a second before it activates. Once it activates, it kills basically everything there other than if the rare was still alive. So that's definitely the faster way to play. Or you can take it a little bit slower, place the totems and like sidestep a little bit while the totems activate. And being able to play fast or safe and kind of switch between the two very easily is really nice. I've felt in hardcore especially, just because sometimes you don't want to like risk running through, and since your damage is kind of on an initial delay, that can be pretty rippy in certain situations. Now as you can see here, this is a 213. The single target boss damage isn't anything special. It's not particularly impressive, but that being said, if you swap from, I'm currently using the Consecrated Path Totems alongside two Ancestral War Chiefs, which is linked to multi-totem on the War Chiefs so that I can get them on top of my regular totems. The DPS of this setup is considerably lower than my actual single target setup, where I put the War Chief into the 6 link. I would take this, put this in the 6 link, and then I'll swap some support gems because Earthbreaker doesn't do anything. And I also put in Multi-Strike because Multi-Strike can now work on melee totems and it's really good for it. The only problem is that Consecrated Path has a specific tag in its gem description that it can't be supported by Multi-Strike, which kind of sucks because it would be really, really nice for mapping if you could, but it is what it is. But anyway, 6-link War Chief plus a 4-link Protector. And so basically War Chief Protector as gems are like more damage efficient than Consecrated Path, which gains you a little bit of damage. But the main thing is we're essentially trading out the AoE bonus of Earthbreaker support for the attack speed bonus of Ancestral Protector, which when this hits level 20, I actually didn't even realize until just now that mine's not level 20 because I've been taking the gem out a bunch. It's 20% more attack speed, but actually This build has like 180% increased buff effect for that, so it comes out to like 56% more attack speed, which is 56% more DPS. Plus the gems being better, it's like almost twice as much DPS as the mapping setup, so you can pump the damage pretty high when you need to, which is quite nice. And as things stand, my character is like okay geared. Decent stuff. I've got like the basics and some decent stuff, but none of the like influenced rares or like the kind of what I would consider the end game stuff, which I'll go over in a moment. But currently I think I'm sitting on my single target setup probably just shy of about 1.5 million DPS. And it is totem DPS, which means like I can put the totems down and then just kind of stand still, or rather I can put the totems down and then dodge around and they just keep doing damage, so the uptime's really good. So close to 1.5 mil right now. When all is said and done and I can get all the gear that I want to, which is like good gear but not min-maxed gear by any means, it'll go up to as somewhere between like 3 million to as high as 3.5 million single target, which to me for a build that has really good DPS uptime like this is way more than enough to comfortably take on all the end game all the end game bosses in the game. And so, real quick, I'm gonna jump through all of the items, starting with the 3 uniques that 2 of them basically are never going to be replaced, and one of which, the shield, will eventually be replaced, but it's very low priority. So lead sprinkler, never getting replaced. This is the core of the build, is how we get the damage from stacking strength, fire damage per strength. And it's just a really good item overall. It's the core, like I said. Next is Zoph's Blood, which gives percent strength. It gives percent life, which is really good because all of our strength is giving us a bunch of flat life. So percent life is really nice. And then 10% fire pen and Avatar of Fire. So the Avatar of Fire doesn't do a ton because the damage we're getting from the lead sprinkler is already just flat fire damage. However, it is, depending on the rest of your gear, it's anywhere from like 4 to 6% more damage because of the little bit of flat here. Oddly enough, like it's more than I would have expected. So you could expect the Avatar Fire part to be like 5% more damage, which is actually not that bad. Technically, you can get a rare that is better than Zoph's Blood. However, it basically needs to have not just percent strength, that needs percent strength and percent attributes, which requires Awakener's Orbing. And it pretty much also needs damage per strength. All 3 of those to beat this, and that's like nearly impossible to get. That's a crazy high investment. There is a chance, there's a possibility of doing a crit setup, which currently I'm RT, so I can't crit. I'm no crit. The way you would do a crit setup would be with, you need the helmet. I believe it's a Warlord mod that gives accuracy based off your strength to get your accuracy up. There's a chance that if you go crit, then like a double percent strength, percent attributes crit multi-neck might be better than this. But the whole crit thing, I haven't looked into it too much recently, so I don't know the exact numbers. That's probably a thing for a separate video when I get the character more maxed out. But just to consider. So basically, my plans are, there's a very decent chance I never replace this amulet, but maybe I do. And then the Tukahama shield gives you +1 totem, which is obviously really good. And then it does have pretty good life. It has some damage. It has good armor, and it has namely Mortal Conviction and Blood Magic. The Blood Magic doesn't matter because I spec it anyway to get the life nodes behind Blood Magic, because this ends up being 20% life for 3 points, which is just good anyway. But so it saves a point. You can get +1 totem on Shaper influenced shields. So eventually, if you can get a really good Shaper influence shield with +1 totem and like a bunch of strength and some life and I guess resists, you probably will replace this with one of those eventually. But again, that's the thing, that's pretty expensive, so it's pretty low priority for me. And then every other slot is more or less, you're going to try to get whatever strength you can and also get life and the resistances you need. Chaos Res in particular can be kind of tricky. I think Amethyst Rings would be really good options for this build, especially with the new buffed ones, just because it's a way to get some guaranteed Chaos Res in. But so just keep in mind life and res on like every item, and then I'm gonna go over quickly kind of what strength stuff you're looking for. So boots, I do have another unique here. It's Alberon's Warpath. This is kind of like a starter pair of boots. This is easily the first unique I replace. I would get a pair of Hunter Influence boots with percent strength, and ideally flat strength. And then obviously the standard life res movement speed. It's kind of tough to craft. One thing, there's a few items like this where you want percent strength and flat strength. Something you can do to help craft those if you're trying to make them yourself is you roll the percent strength, and then you bench craft flat strength, and then you use harvest. With this craft, I've got a few saved up. Reforge a rare item being much more likely to receive the same modifier types. So even if the flat strength is bench crafted, it's a strength roll. It's in that same mod group. So there's a decent chance that when you use this, it becomes percent strength and a not bench crafted flat strength. Otherwise, they're really tricky to craft and it's really annoying. And you might just throw a ton of essences or something. You can do the same thing with a belt, with an elder belt with percent attributes. However, the ideal belt and what I'll be going for is a synthesized belt with a percent strength implicit. That's pretty trivial to roll. You just use like a strength essence until you hit something decent. Gloves is probably the only one that you're not looking at similar stats. Like, there's not a percent strength roll for gloves. The type of influence mods you would look for is either intimidate on hit or culling strike, or both if you have, you know, enough investment. I forget which influences those are each, but those are kind of things to look out for. Rings, there's not really much special you could do. You could go for a flammability on hit ring if you don't want to self-cast it. I don't mind self-casting. Or otherwise, you technically can find like percent strength implicit synthesized rings, probably maybe on softcore trade, but anywhere else that's not going to be really realistic, so I'm not really worrying with that. For the foreseeable future, I probably won't have influence on either of my rings. It's not a big deal. They're also just a good way to focus on getting all of the resistances. As you can see, both of mine have quite high res. Body armor is similar as the boots, where you can get a percent strength roll on Elder. You can also get percent strength on Warlord, but the mod weight for the Elder one is higher, so it's easier to roll, so I'm going to go for an Elder chest. And then the same story, life res. You can use the harvest craft there. And then ideally, if you're lucky, if you get like a good one with an open suffix, you can also even benchcraft percent attributes, which I don't think I have unlocked yet, which is why mine has just flat all attributes, because I needed like a tiny bit of int or something. But there's a percent attributes you can unveil. You can do that eventually. And then the last rare would be the helmet, which outside of getting the flat strength and the life, the only thing mainly to go for, if you're still RT, would be the -9 fire res roll, which is Warlord mod. But that one's pretty low prio and might be kind of annoying to craft, so as far as the rares go, that one's lower on the list. The flasks, I mean, flasks this league are weird. I got my Quicksilver, I've got my Granite Flask, which I really like. I swapped recently from Steel Skin to Molten Shell, and I've been digging it because you do get quite a bit of armor. I'm at almost 8k unbuffed, but if I place my totems, I go all the way up to 13,000 with no flasks or anything. So Molten Shell's really nice. The only thing I can say in particular, like I have an auto freeze removal, which is obviously nice. I have warding on my Quicksilver because adrenaline sucks now. But Overflowing Chalice is actually really nice this league. Mainly because it already doesn't gain charges during its effect, which is the big downside of the new Enkindling Orbs, which make it so you can't get charges during effect but buff the flasks. So it's basically just buffing the flask because that downside is already on the flask. And so mine has increased effect, which if this was rolled like perfectly well, it would equate to a total of 150% charges gained, increased charges gained by other flasks while this one's active. And my other two like main utility flasks don't have the limitation. I haven't used those orbs on them. And then in addition to that, it also increases the percent damage that the sulfur gives by default up to 60% increased damage. And while mapping, it's very noticeable using one of these that I have better Quicksilver uptime, which is definitely very nice. And then I guess the granite as well, obviously, but like really the Quicksilver, because this build doesn't clear horribly, but it definitely isn't a speedster by any means, as you saw. But yeah, that's the gear. I'm going to do the passive tree really quickly. If you want to see the whole passive tree, I'll get a POB link in the description. You can see all that stuff there. But like the notable stuff would be Might of the Meek to the right of Marauder is very strong. You can hit all of your starting nodes. You can see I even spec'd out this way instead of through this extra life node because these are now 15 strength. I have a Lethal Pride off to the left, which I'm not using for any keystones. I'm just using for the flat strength that it's adding to all the small nodes. And then the currently 4 notables I have in reach. Eventually I'll get a 5th with this +1 endurance charge. There's a lot of really good mods you can hit on these for this build. The big ones would be like % strength, obviously. Mine doesn't have any strength currently, but it does have 10% chance to intimidate on hit, which since I don't have that on my gloves at the moment is really strong. But there's also things like % life is good, fortify effect is good, chance to deal double damage is good. There's 20 flat strength, which is solid. There's like melee damage. There's just a lot of really good stuff you can hit on the notables, and you can get a pretty good amount of them there, which is really nice. And then the other thing to note would be the cluster jewels, which the main part of this is the 2 medium totem jewels, which you're using to get onslaught, which you have onslaught if you summoned a totem recently, and also this one, which gives ancestor totem buff effect, and totem's action speed can't be modified below base value, which basically that means your totems are immune to freeze and chill. That's essentially what that is, which is really nice because like if you think of like chilled ground maps or like any bosses, like chilled ground stuff especially is really annoying since your totems can't move off of the chilled ground because they're stationary. Actually, I guess these ones aren't stationary technically, but you get the idea. And then I split these 2 nodes, these main ones, up into 2 different jewels so that ideally the other node on both of these can be this one, which gives placement speed and attack speed. This one currently doesn't have that same notable. I gotta roll another one eventually. But yeah, that's the thing. And then the large cluster is a mace or scepter damage one. You're kind of just getting whatever for damage. If you can get weight advantage is particularly really good. Damage, double damage, and strength. And then Overlord is actually quite good. I believe it's 30% damage and it's Fortify on hit. Which I'm already getting Fortify from Vigilant Strike. But it means your totems, when they hit, they will fortify themselves. Which just means your totems don't die as much, because that can be an issue sometimes. So eventually I'll try to get one of those. I don't have that at the moment because the Overlord node is really freaking rare. But eventually that will be a thing. And yeah, that's the tree. I also realized I forgot to go over the gems while I was going over the gear. It's pretty basic. I've got a Flame Dash and a Flame Ability in this one. The War Chief, which is this currently, it's like the secondary totem. It's linked to multi-totem, so you can cast it on top of your regular totems. A wedge for just damage, and then the other main thing here is Combustion, which is giving the -10 fire res debuff to mobs, which helps both of your totems, which is really nice. Then I've got a Shield Charge Vigilant Strike setup, which is just linked to faster attacks and Ancestral Call. I have my Flesh and Stone, which I get for free because it's an aura, and I have Mortal Conviction, so it's my 1 free aura. And I have it linked to increased AoE and Arrogance, so the blind area is bigger and the buff effect is bigger. And these don't actually increase any reservation because it's a free aura, so it's still 0. And then there's an Enduring Cry in there as well. With I have the Instant War Cry node. And then in the shield is my cast damage taken Molten Shell. And then I have Vol Molten Shell being manually hit whenever I need it. But yeah, so that's the build. That's how it's going right now. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the build a lot. I've played War Chiefs in the past, and the one biggest annoyance of them was while they're really good and really safe at bossing, which yes, this build is like really safe for bossing, especially as you get it more geared. The mapping with War Chiefs was always a huge struggle, and Consecrated Path Totem just goes a very long way in helping that. So it's nice. It's nice. If it looks interesting to you, I would recommend checking it out for sure, because getting it going is pretty straightforward. Like, you can get off the ground and running with basically just a lead sprinkler and rares with flat strength rolls on them. The first big upgrade is definitely the +1 shield, I think, just because a third totem makes a very noticeable difference mapping. Yeah, that's all I got. That's the build. That's the video. I'll possibly do an updated one as I get the character really geared out and kind of explore some super endgame gearing options and all that. But thank you for watching. Hope it was helpful. Hope it was interesting. And that's it for me. See ya.